What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kinnahan, and I'm coming to you on this Monday afternoon, a little bit later than usual because I had to take some time to decompress after yesterday's game. I had to, just gather. I had a lot of thoughts going in my head. I just had to gather myself on how I was going to go about this episode. So a little bit later than usual, but I'm here to talk about the Commanders' 44-22 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Washington now 3-4 on the year. The Cowboys 3-1. It has been not the start to a season that Washington fans have hoped for, and it continued in Dallas. Doubled up by your number one rival on the road, and it really was just a culmination of a ton of things that have hit this team so far this season. From the injuries, which continue, to the lack of play, solid play, average play on defense, to even, offensively, just nothing being able to work without number 5 at quarterback. It has been a complete disaster for the Washington Commanders over this season. It really has. They're 3-4. They have a losing record. I believe this is for the second time. For the first time, actually. A losing record for the first time in the Dan Quinn era, I believe. Last year, they got off to a pretty hot start, so I'm pretty sure this is the first time. This is the first time that they've ever had a losing record in the Dan Quinn era. Vibes are at an all-time low, which I don't know if they were even up to begin this season, which I'll get into that in a little bit. But ever since the preseason, I hate to say it, but ever since the Terry holdout, the vibes of this team just have felt off the entire time. And it continued. It's continued into the play throughout the season so far. It has been a disaster on Washington's end in a variety of aspects. Also, you had, of course, the injuries, and that plays a role. But overall, this has been as a disaster of a start to a season as you could imagine if you were a Washington fan. Coming off of an NFC Championship game where the Commanders made it to the NFC Championship game last year for the first time in 30 years. And you're coming off of a season like that. We won 14 games, regular season and postseason. And the Jane Daniels rookie year, it was so clear that Adam Peters thought, oh, we made it to the NFC Championship game. Let's go or maybe not to Adam Peters' mind, but to the fans' minds, that these moves that Washington was making are win-now moves. When Washington isn't really in a win now, a true go all in, all the cards are on the table, team right now. It is obvious that Washington's nowhere close to being one of the top teams in the NFL. And last season, the win against the Lions, you can call it a fluke, whatever you want, they won the game. And ultimately, that kind of, in a way, twisted Washington's fans' mind into believing, they can compete. Washington can compete with the top teams in the NFC. And in the regular season, we didn't see it, right? If you look back at the Eagles game, they beat the Eagles when Jalen Hurts was hurt. And they only barely beat the Eagles. They turned the ball over 5 times in that game. But any other time Washington played a highly competitive team in the regular season, they lost. And it's kind of continued into this year. I mean, they lost to Dallas with Cooper Rush at quarterback. They lost to the Steelers, who are a playoff team. You look at the teams they beat. I don't think they beat a single playoff team in the regular season beyond the Eagles. Yeah, I don't think they did. I'm looking back. Last season, the only playoff team they beat in the regular season were the Eagles once, and that was when Hurts got hurt. So then you look at, the playoffs themselves. They beat Tampa Bay, barely. And then they go on to have one of the greatest games in Washington franchise history the next week. So it's kind of led Washington fans to believing this team is all in when really it's not. There's way too many holes on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball that Washington hasn't filled yet. And last season they got better play out of a lot of their veterans, with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu and some of the older guys that maybe stepped up that don't usually perform at the highest of levels, like Olamide Zaccheaus had a great stretch towards the back end of the year, and De'Ami Brown. Who knew we were going to get a De'Ami Brown breakout game in the final game, a final win that he ever played in Washington? So there's a lot of things you could say it's lucky. You could say that happened all at the same time and all kind of clicked at the same time to ultimately lead Washington to an NFC Championship game. But you actually take a step back and look at this team overall, especially heading into this year. Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner, all another year older. And it's not like they were invincible last season either. Wagner consistently got exposed in coverage. They just never really had him out there, or teams didn't really expose him in coverage as much as they maybe wanted to. And it was kind of hidden by the amount of pressure Washington was getting on the quarterback, especially during that playoff run with their front four and Frankie Louvu as well. And Washington continues throughout this season. Not much you can do it now at this point, but Washington continues to add older bodies. Talk about Austin Eckler, right? Eckler's done for the year, but he was an older guy. You look at adding Javon Kinlaw, Preston Smith, right? These are older players that aren't really going to deliver you. Von Miller is a big one, right? On the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk about Lattimore once we get to the defense, but it has been a disaster in terms of roster construction and preparing for your older players to get older in a way. I don't know if I want to necessarily blame it all on Adam Peters, because we don't really know what Adam Peters thinks in a way as well, because maybe he knew that this was going to be a down year. I just felt like over the offseason, Washington could have done a better job of developing some of their younger guys or getting younger. Instead, over the offseason, Washington got older, and they're paying for it now. They're really paying for it now, and that's in part the reason why they have so many injuries that they have. Dietrich Wise, in his 30s. Will Harris, right? Noah Brown, Austin Eckler, like I mentioned, even Terry in a way. Like, I get Terry is a great player for Washington and everything, but he is, an older player now, and you have to be prepared that he's not going to be as reliable as he once was. Same with Debo in a way, with his injury as well. So Washington has just gotten older, and they've really lacked getting younger. You could say they've tried with Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey in the receiver room, bringing in two linebackers like Kay Madrano and Jordan McGee in the linebacker room, but McGee barely plays. Madrano has only been active for, I think, one game this season. Alek Kaho, a UDFA linebacker that they've kind of liked, has been inactive every game as well. Like, some of these guys are just not delivering, and the guys you drafted to replace them, you're not giving them any chances. So it's a lot to talk about. That was kind of just my initial thoughts. Let's dive into the offense, though, of this game itself. Jaden, 12 of 22, 156 yards and a touchdown. Took 2 sacks. It wasn't a great game from Jaden overall, but you look at, he was leading scoring drives. He had a rushing touchdown as well, and he only played in, 2.5 quarters before going down with his injury, which I tried to wait until, Dan Quinn would say something about the status of Jaden. Oh, here it is. Jaden Daniels had an MRI on his hamstring and is not considered a long-term injury, but his status for next Monday won't be revealed until later this week. So that's the status on Jaden. Dorrance Armstrong is out for the year. Significant injury to his knee. That was obvious as well because that was a non-contact injury. So he's now out for the year, your best pass rusher as well. It is a complete disaster for Washington this season in so many levels. I don't even know if I want to talk about this game specifically. I'm kind of talking about this offense overall this season. Without five on the field, it's impossible for this offense to do anything. And you can blame the injuries, right, with Harry and Debo and Noah Brown, but you got to know that these guys are injury prone, and you got to be prepared for that. Noah Brown hasn't played a full season in his entire career. Debo has been in and out of the Niners lineup the last couple of seasons. Terry, he was healthy last year, but he's even had his fair share of injuries throughout the course of his career as well. And you also have to wonder with Terry, right? He never practiced in the offseason until a couple weeks before week one. So you gotta, I don't know if it was entirely on his conditioning or anything like that, because I'm pretty sure he's still working out and staying conditioned. It's not like he's not conditioned. He's an NFL football player. He's one of the most conditioned people in the world. But you've got to have to imagine the lack of reps, though, in the offseason could have played a part in Terry getting hurt, just because he wasn't running at the full speed of a game simulation or anything like that. So that also plays a part in things as well. And then the guys that they've brought into, there's not much you can do in the regular season at this point, but the guys that have been in to replace them, Robbie Chosen, Chris Moore, they're not doing anything. I feel Chris Moore he's made some plays for Washington, but he's been here the longest. It is so obvious that guys like Robbie Chosen and ultimately Treylon Burks, who we should see, in the next few weeks being active, they're not going to have that much chemistry with Jaden. And even the players that do have chemistry, I'm looking at Luke McCaffrey, no catches on 2 targets for Luke. The players in the 2024 class, those second-round picks, McCaffrey, Sinnott, those weapons that you drafted highly in the 2024 draft aren't delivering for you. They're not. And it's ultimately led, to what has occurred now. It's ultimately led to what has occurred now here with this Washington offense. The offensive line, I feel like, has done a great job this season overall. Sam Cosmi coming back, he had only allowed 2 pressures, I believe, in the game. So that was the one bright spot for Washington. The offensive line has been great this season. It really has, especially in pass protection. So I got to give the props to them. That unit's been probably the best unit out of any unit. Maybe you could say beyond Jaden at quarterback this season. And that's mainly because they stayed healthy, That's the only unit that has stayed healthy. And that's why they've been playing really well. Tunsil, Paul, Biotish, Cosme, Connerly, Allegretti, and Wiley and Scott are all healthy as well. That's a lot of guys that are healthy. And so they've been able to play well because of it. Running backs, Bill Krosky-Merritt has been a nice find for Adam Peters, but not much. You're not getting much really out of Rodriguez at this point, and out of Krosky-Merritt. They're not game-changing players for this offense. I feel there are a lot of key core pieces on this offense. The offensive line is great. You definitely want to bring all those guys back next year. But in terms of the weapons that Jaden Daniels has, there needs to be some major changes, I think. Terry is fine, right? But you got to know that he's probably not going to be that reliable as he once was, just because he's older. Debo has been a great weapon in some scenarios for Washington so far this season. I would expect him, to potentially be back. But at the same time, he's probably pretty replaceable too. McCaffrey and Lane are just 2 young guys that you don't really know what you're getting. At this point with McCaffrey, he's shown that he can do some things well, but ultimately he's not a guy that's going to be able to make catches through contact or anything like that. And unless he's wide open, he's not going to do anything on offense. And for Jalen Lane, I feel like he had a couple of good catches, led the team in receiving yards against Dallas, but ultimately, he's not that number 1 dog receiver for your team right now. And the positions that those guys have been put in are just so significantly more important than what you were hoping for those guys to be in at this point in the season. You'd hope to maybe have Luke McCaffrey or Jalen Lane, have some flashes, but Terry and Debo and Noah Brown kind of lead the way at your wide receiver in your wide receiver room. Well, now Jalen Lane is your wide receiver one. Chris Moore is your wide receiver two. You've got Robbie Chosen out there every play, and Luke McCaffrey still, even with Robbie Chosen and Chris Moore being in that wide receiver rotation now, McCaffrey still can't really find a ton of snaps. It's been a disaster in the receiver room, and things need to change. It's a pretty old receiver room. There's a couple of young guys like Lane and McCaffrey, but there needs to be another consistent weapon for Jaden Daniels next season at this point. All right. The defense. Oh, boy. The defense. We all know. I'm just going to start it with him, Lattimore. We all know that that guy stinks. All right. I'm trying to think of Lattimore's best moment as a Washington Commander, and I can't really think of one. I can't. There's not one that comes to mind. When you trade for a dog at cornerback that you're hoping to get, someone who has been at the top of his game whenever he was healthy, but someone who's, you're hoping you traded for him at the time when he was hurt, and you're hoping it was kind of more of he's hurt because he doesn't really want to play for the Saints, who kind of suck right now. But if he gets traded, he'll probably play and be healthy. It's kind of like a ghost injury. Well, he was out for a large majority and was a liability for the large majority of 2024 when he played for Washington. And here in 2025, he's been even more of a liability. It is crazy to me that he is still getting starting snaps for the Washington Commanders, and it is week 8. We're going into week 8, halfway through the season. And Joe Witt and Dan Quinn have not given up on Marshawn Lattimore. I get that you traded some very hefty capital for this guy. Was it third, a fourth, and a fifth or something like that for Marshawn Lattimore? It was some pretty big capital to land this guy. But ultimately, it's not worked out. And even though you've given him a lot of capital, there's an out after the season. I doubt he's back next year. You got to realize that it's time to pack it up and move on. Move on to the next guy. Lattimore has not been who you thought he was. It has been almost an entire season now full of games. You had he came back, he played probably 5 games or so last year, and now he's played 7 this year. It's been a full calendar year almost since Washington traded for him. He's 100% healthy. No more excuses with the hamstring, supposedly, right? Supposedly. And he's still not being able to. He's still the worst corner on the team. He's playing like the worst corner on the team. You were hoping that trading for a guy like Lattimore would drastically improve the cornerback room that was being led by Michael Davis and Benjamin St-Juste last season, along with Mikey Sanders. Still, he was in there as well. But you had to move him outside of his normal position to do so. So it's like, what is the definition of insanity? Repeatedly doing the same thing over and over again, knowing you'll get the same result. That is what's happening right now with Marshawn Lattimore. And I'm very, very interested to see what happens in the secondary moving forward. It's a big game next week, Monday Night Football in Arrowhead against the Chiefs. And if Lattimore is out there starting once more for the Commanders, big-time questions have to be asked. Big-time questions, because he is consistently getting picked on whenever Washington plays a team with a true dominant wide receiver one, or just 2 very good wide receivers in general. You look at the Eagles game last year, and you look at the Cowboys game this year, they are consistently picking on Marshawn Lattimore. Now, this year, they've mainly put Lattimore on the left side, Amos on the right side of the defense, and offenses are taking advantage of it. Offenses are taking advantage of it big time, and it's annoying. It's disappointing. It's everything, really. It's everything. Other thoughts on this defensive line. I just found out about the Dorrance Armstrong thing. It's really rough. It is rough. He's been your best pass rusher this season. and him being out for the year is devastating. To me, that's the final like nail in the coffin. This team is done. This team's not going to get any pressure on the quarterback anymore, and the secondary stinks. It's not entirely, a schematic fault that they're not getting any pressure. It's kind of a personnel fault. But also, you got the injuries. You lose Dietrich Wise for the year. Then Javonte Jean-Baptiste comes in to replace him. You lose him for the year. And now Dorrance Armstrong, your best pass rusher, who has had a very, very good start to the season, by the way, is now done for the year as well. Next week, you're starting. Well, first off, I would expect Washington to sign another edge rusher. But next week, your starting edge rushers are going to be Preston Smith, and Washington doesn't have another healthy guy at edge rusher. I don't think. I mean, who would it be? Who would it be? It's I guess Javon Kinlaw if he plays edge, right? I mean, look at free agent edge rushers. Look at the current free agents at the edge rusher position. Let me see. Position, edge, defender, types, available. DeMarcus Walker, Jerry Hughes, Carl Lawson, Shaq Barrett. These are the current guys. These are the current guys. And it is insane to me how John Kaminsky, come on, what are we doing? I have no clue what Washington is about to do at edge rusher for the rest of this season because they just got no one else left. Frankie Louvu, I guess, would be playing edge, you could say, and then maybe make Jordan McGee that second linebacker. But apparently they don't really like to play McGee or any of the other young linebackers that maybe would be better in coverage than Bobby Wagner or Frankie Louvu. They haven't really tested them out, so I wouldn't really expect that to happen. It would be Von Miller. Jacob Martin. I left those guys out. Von Miller and Jacob Martin are your other edge rushers. But man, Von Miller has solely played on pass-heavy third down so far this season. And he's now about to be in that rotation along with Preston Smith and Jacob Martin. Jacob Martin has had a great year, by the way, in my opinion. He's really stepped up, and I felt that was a sneaky good free agent signing, and he really has been great in the role he's played. Now, as the primary edge rusher for the Commanders, beats me. But in the role he's played with those guys in front of him, he's been great in a small sample size. So. Yeah, that's really what I got on that. There's just so much happening, and that leads me to this. Something needs to change before next week. I already mentioned whether it's Lattimore being benched, whether it's I don't know, some significant schematic changes on that defense, or if it's even Joe Witt being fired at this point in the season. Which I think it's unlikely this week. Maybe at the bye. The bye is what I'm kind of looking at for some coaching changes. You've got Kansas City, Seattle, Detroit, Miami, and then a bye week. That is like HE double hockey sticks. I mean, the Miami game in Madrid is going to be fine. But Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold. Goff and Darnold have been two of the most efficient quarterbacks this season. And now you mix in Patrick Mahomes in there, and that's a pretty rough stretch. Other final thoughts before we wrap up. Shout out Trust Way for that one punt and then the safety. Deron Payne in the contract year has been great. He's been awesome. Now, would I re-sign him after this year? No way. No way. Just because he's done this to us before. Where when he gets that big payday, he kind of just disappears. And he's done that. He already did that. And if I give him a 2-year contract, maybe a short-term deal. But he's going to be wanting a lot of money after the season he's having now. He's been the best player on the defensive line so far this season for the Commanders. And that's really that. There's really nothing else to say about that. I think there needs to be a very big shift this offseason in the identity of this team, which is crazy to it's crazy to say. I think Peters and Quinn deserve to have a third year for sure. I mean, even if this team wins 2 or 3 more games the rest of the season, I still believe in Peters and Quinn. That what they did in 2024, which is only last season, by the way. I know it's felt like forever ago almost, but that was only last season. What they did in 2024 was incredible. And if I'm Adam Peters, this offseason, I'm trying to get younger. I'm trying to bring in more youth to this team that not only was the oldest team in the league last year, but got older after last season. During this offseason, they got older. How is that possible? You are the oldest team in the league, averaging about 32 or 33 years, right, of age, something crazy like that. And you got older. I guess because everyone else, you became 1 year older technically, right? But you added Von Miller, you added Preston Smith, you added these older players that just don't have it anymore, and you're relying on them on them for roles that they haven't been able to live up to in 5 years, half a decade. It has been a disaster for the Washington Commanders in the first 7 weeks of the season. There's still a lot of room, 10 games to go. But the Commanders just finished their easiest stretch of the season, and they are 3-4. The Commanders will probably be favored in 3 more games the rest of the season. 3. You got Miami. Washington will probably be favored in, as long as Jaden Daniels plays. Minnesota. Washington might be favored in. I don't even know at that point. I mean, that's in December. They may be favored in that. And the Giants, Washington will probably be favored in that as well. But the Giants, the Giants have played really good last couple of weeks. So you never know. But again, that game's in mid-December. Every other game, Kansas City, Seattle, Detroit, Denver, Philly twice, Dallas again. Washington's going to be heavy underdogs in the majority of those. So the Commanders have won 3 games this season. Would not be surprised if they win 3 games the rest of the way. It's at that point. For Commanders fans. All right. Next week, Kansas City, Monday Night Football. Next pod will be out on Tuesday. Oh boy. That game's going to be something, especially if Mariota plays. Oh, watch out. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. This has been a very, unfortunate start to the season for the Washington Commanders in a majority of ways. But that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I've been yours, Mason Kinnahan. See you guys in the next one. Peace.